Hello, welcome again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from. And thank you for joining today. If we can just make sure our technology is working as expected, please give me a thumbs up or hello in the chat, and we will get started. Yet another exciting topic. We're into part two of the book and chapter 6. And next week we will wrap up the book. Launching now, we've set a date, December 1st. So it will be exciting. If you are interested in that, do watch for our announcements and get in touch with us. As usual, you can reach me directly or via the website, biqorg.com/events is where you find all these recordings, and Nagui at biqorg.com. If you want to email me directly, I will be happy to assist. All right, so let's get into this. As I mentioned, this is the chapter 6. It's the last chapter in this, and next week we will do a complete review and pull it all together for you. So without further ado, let's just do a quick overview of what we've covered in part 2. This has been the behavior intelligence modules. So in week 1, we covered the observation, the opinions, the facts, not the stories, getting away from making up stories. Week 2, cracking the code, the patterns that predict performance, predictability mostly, focus on that. The week 3, this is all leadership intelligence. In order to be a great leader, you really need to embrace all of these tools and understandings. Get clarity. Okay, your filters are distorting things. Hopefully, some of this is simple and it should be a refresher for most people. Making the invisible visible, and turning that into something that helps you uncover the hidden drivers. Facts versus feeling, that was last week. Great topic, one of my favorite. Separating behavior from emotion and understanding how to work with behavior. So today we're going to go below that and go into the next level, as I mentioned, and go deeper into what are the motivations behind some of those behaviors and the intentions. And that's why next week wraps all this up. It's really important to do that. Okay. So we're shifting, we're 6 out of 7 sessions. Hopefully you got lots of nuggets from this and things to do. As you know, every session ends with a list of things that you can practice with your team and your organization. Today's focus, we're going to move from observing to understanding the engine that creates that, right? Why this matters is you can't change what you don't understand. And last week we talked about you can't change what you can't see, right? And so these two things do go together. And today is about the engine, right? And unfortunately, the reality of what happens when we don't observe these methodology, if you like, behavior intelligence method, we start treating the symptoms instead of getting to the root cause. And today is about really understanding how do you get to the root cause and what impact will that have on you and your team when you achieve that. It's an exciting part of that becoming a great leader, right? So teams miss deadlines. We apply stricter tracking, right? When people are resisting feedback, we jump into more frequent check-ins to make sure that nobody is falling behind. Again, we're treating the symptoms, not the cause. When energy drops in meetings, we hire motivational speakers. When collaboration suffers, more team building exercises. All of these things really, they sound like they're a good idea. Okay. In fact, we fall in that trap quite often. So, why not today? Why not take a different look at this and how to shift that without trying to put all these band-aids on top of it? Okay. And instead of trying to manage all these behaviors without really understanding the motivation, yes, we need to, and we talked about the behaviors last week, but we need to get to the core before applying some of those techniques. Okay. So learning how to diagnose that. So we often use the iceberg as an example. The reality is, what sank the Titanic is they couldn't see what was under the water, and what you see above the waterline is a fraction of what's under the water. The same when we talk about people, we're talking about what we observe are the behaviors, but underneath that is a lot of stuff that created those behaviors, right? And so if you talk about the 10% versus 90%, we see the behavior as late arrival, missing deadlines, disengaged body language, all of these behavioral things, but we don't really understand the core reason behind it. What values, what beliefs are going on? What are the defense mechanisms that someone is going through? What do they fear? What are those hidden psychological conditions that are in place that we need to understand before the behavior above the waterline will actually start to make sense. Not start to change, but make sense that it needs to be changed, right? So, when and understanding the neuroscience of that is really, what are the hidden operating systems that our brain is engaging in to create those behaviors, right? And so we talked a little bit last week about the dopamine hit and the rewards. So whatever we do that gets rewarded gets the pre-dopamine hit before the result actually happens, or there's all kinds of neural pathways that are going on in that situation. So we end up continuing to repeat the wrong behaviors because of the dopamine hit. Threat, the flight and fight, we talked about that also last week. The amygdala kicks in when we're in threat. The prefrontal cortex shuts down, and we're no longer logical, and it hijacks our ability to process information logically and move with it. The automatic unconscious habits that take place, the brain also is lazy. It prefers to do things that it's done before because it can do them at a high speed, unconscious, instantaneous habit. So what are some of those things, and recognizing those? So understanding the brain is really what we're trying to achieve here, is making sure that you have an appreciation of their value, their needs that are being addressed before leaping into those conclusions, right? So when we talk about the surface versus the engine, these are some examples, right? You need to communicate better. This is treating, the surface problem, whereas, the engine question is, I see you value precision. Why don't we structure something that honors that puts check-ins in place? So instead of jumping to the trying to put things in place. Why not do it through an understanding? Stop being defensive in meetings. What would help you to feel safer, to share concerns more easily, more clearly. If you take some of this, and I'll talk about the, actually, is that coming up in one of the slides? We'll talk about the Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team and that trust layer that is at the bottom of that. And I want to share with you some correlation within that. So how do you do this? Well, the first thing you want to learn to practice, and be careful with the word why, because, I often tell people why can sometimes come across as triggering someone to be defensive. And we want to use this why instead of targeting someone to learn, right? So the 3 whys in this case is, why did that happen? It's more seeking to understand. And why was that important? It allows you to go deeper and helping them also go deeper in understanding. And then the 3rd why really is the one that gets to the core motivation. And, why does that matter to you? How do you feel when that happens? All of those things. And you can replace some of the whys with what's, what was it that happened? What was it about that was important, right? And what does that do to you, or what does it mean to you, and how do you feel about that, right? So you can replace those. But it's important to just, the purpose is 3 whys is easy to remember, right? So example, why were you late, right? Consistently, I'm attending too many meetings, or, I've accepted all the meetings appointments because I don't want to be left out of the decision, right? We'll get to the 3rd why in a minute, but why fear of missing on some of those decisions, the need to control, etc. Okay, so the observable behavior is she always arrives 10 or 15 minutes late in the mornings. Okay, why? The first response is, morning kids routine is unpredictable. I can't always manage that. Okay, and how come you don't have a buffer time? The 2nd why, the core values being presented, the evening, it's busy, right? So there's all kinds of things. So the solution is, well, why don't we shift the meeting to 10 a.m.? Okay, and so 95% shift to being on time, right? So the process is important. Leaders' blind spots, they misread things because of the way they observe and distort, and we've talked about that in previous sessions. The first assumption we see a lot of is, if we pay them more, if we put bonuses in place, that's often not a great driver for people, right? They want certainty, they want purpose, they want the ability to grow in most cases. Then they value that often more than money. So, jumping to the money conclusion all the time is not ideal, but it is important. So don't ignore that, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Interpreting quiet as disengaged, maybe they're just deep thinkers. They need to process information. I talked about that as well. I personally need time to process, so I will take things away rather than make a decision on the spot. Resistance, seen as pushback or laziness, but in fact it might just be, looking for clarity, or, just because somebody is asking lots of questions, they might be not conflicted, but just seeking clarity, right? Believing that high performance don't need any support. sometimes they are driven by insecurity, and that insecurity means they could leave any day, and you need to recognize and figure out how to help them with that. Thinking that motivation is permanent, nope. People are constantly evolving, their priorities shift, some things shift, so you need to constantly check that. The behavior intelligence solution is really the logic in how do you deal with that? What do you do? What's the process to engage with that? And again, I'm just touching the surface through these sessions. There will be a more detailed workshop around some of these things. So, principle 2, okay? So 3 whys was 1. Now, the need drives the behavior. Every habit serves a hidden need. This is what you need to really understand. Everything that you observe as a habit is serving a need, or it's being put into a bucket because it was rewarded. There's a dopamine hit. We touched on that. So you need to understand what's the need behind those observable behaviors. Okay? Late night emails. What's actually happening is this person needs recognition. So, they think by showing that they're working late that they'll get that recognition. Someone who's avoiding difficult conversation, maybe it's a safety issue. They're uncomfortable in those situations, or they need harmony in a workplace. Over preparing for a presentation, need for respect and competence, or actually could be also a fear of not being liked with the presentation, or people reject it. So there's a whole bunch of things that relate to that as well. Constantly volunteering, needing to be significant, look at me, I'm volunteering for all of these things. Maybe an insecurity again in place. So understanding those, and I'm just throwing stuff out there. You need to go through this discovery, right? So the key is to identify the needs so that you can design a healthier environment system. Remember, environment is very powerful, and you need to create that environment. So we use the SCARF method, the framework. So first is status. Okay, so feeling important. This is a test that you can do when you're trying to figure out what's going on. Ask the question, is this to do with status? Or is it to do with certainty, or both? Is the status covered, and now we're into certainty, and they don't have that comfortable level of certainty? And we need to look at more examples of that. Autonomy, sense of control over work and decisions, so that uncertainty is something that is also motivated through control. Relatedness, connection, belonging, fairness, equitable treatment, being treated equally with others and respected equally. Right. So if we look at this from a Maslow in the workplace, hierarchy and needs now brought into teams. And this is where you might want to put this pyramid along with the Patrick Lencioni 5 dysfunctions of a team, because they do cross over and they overlap. And I think it's really important to do that. And I'll do that in the workshops. So the level 1 is physiological. Am I being treated fair? Do I get a fair compensation? Is it reasonable hours? Do I feel comfortable? And so once we get past that layer, we then get into the job security question. It's a psychological safety. Are things predictable around here or not? Right? then we're comfortable enough to then look for the collaboration, connection, inclusion, all of these things that then create the next layer. And then we start to shine because we feel confident to be able to speak up. So this is all the building that trust environment layer, right? Then people will feel like they can open up, that they can share. You start to see people shine and get to the top level where they're having a contribution to create a meaningful impact, being creative, etc., and so forth. So understanding those journeys and where people are on your team, each team member will be in different stages of that depending on how long they've been in your team and what the environment and the safety is and all of these questions. So it's important to remember that the needs drive the behaviors, right? And so when we're trying to change the behaviors, if we haven't really also talked about the need that's being challenged, if you like, by that change, we won't get the effective change, right? So the underlying drivers, step one, pick a pattern that you want to change. What pattern did you see that is a problem? What needs does it serve you or that person if that was changed, right? What emotion, outcome are you seeking, okay? And brainstorm alternatives. I'm going to take you through some examples, okay? And then pilot it, right? And learn, right? Yes, people say, well, it's easy for you because you're a scientist. That's what you do. You test things. Yeah, but anybody can do this. This is just an exercise. It's like going to the gym and you're given a script to follow for your workout, right? So anybody can do these things. So here's an example, connecting the behavior to the underlying drivers, understanding that. So the pattern is checking email every 10 minutes. Why? I want to be in control, uncertainty, who needs me, right? So the change that can support that effectively is designating email times in your calendar or dashboard, okay? Or if you follow the traditional breaks that you get, the Pomodoro style, if you like, then maybe at those breaks you check email, right? But you don't disrupt what you're doing to check the email again, right? So it creates the same certainty, but allows for better focus. We often talk about a default schedule, and that's important too. So here's another example. Marcus works 70 hours a week. Oh, wow, the surface assessment would jump to the conclusion, so much effort, so much energy, what a great employee. I wish he had a bit more life balance, maybe. Okay. The diagnosis then through the processes we talked about, the why, the SCARF method, they're seeking status through, to make themselves indispensable, right? Okay. It gives them control and also makes sure that they'll never be expendable. So that whole security, some of the things. So understanding that to reduce that whole stress, imagine the stress that someone is putting on themselves to do all of that. And all you have to do is practice a engine solution. Right? So in this case is, showcase his work, right? So he feels important. It creates that, you're doing good work, right? Give him some team members to delegate to, right? And then have those security conversations, don't forget. So his productivity went up and he was doing less hours and getting more done, right? Okay, so that's a good way to do that. Number 3, we're going to unpack a little bit of what happens and take it to that next level. Every action is an intelligent attempt to solve a problem. Okay, so if you keep that in mind, it will help you with this next piece. Meeting interruptions. Why does somebody do that, right? Is it to maintain influence? Are they someone who wants to be seen as influential? The perfectionist paralysis. Okay, is it to avoid criticism? I talked about that earlier. Is it the fear that this will be judged negatively and I don't want to go through that, right? My competence is being challenged, etc. Avoiding feedback, the self-esteem cycle, and over-committing, to show value. Look how important I am, right? So what we're really asking people to do is reframe from that judgment, what a difficult person, to becoming the intelligent problem solver. All right, so let's go through how we do that. This is the deconstruct method. It's 4 steps. It's simple. Describe, explore, understand, and co-create. Right. So describe the behavior, the pattern that you're seeing. Explore what are you trying to achieve. Try to understand your own desires, but their motivations as well, right? Understand what makes this feel right for you and for them, and then co-create. Create a new strategy that will allow us to shift that from a defensive conversation into a collaborative strategizing. I often, I've been talking to a lot of coaches from around the world about many of the things that they are doing and we're doing, and I'm seeing a lot of conversation around going for a walk or working with a whiteboard or flip chart, because of the shift of energy. Instead of being face to face, the energy is shifted to side by side. Okay, and when you're side by side, you're actually strategizing and working together. So even a body language shift like that could help you to work with people differently and solve those problems. So another example, the meeting interrupter. David constantly interrupts colleagues in meetings, and it's everybody's complaining and feeling disrespected because of the interruptions. But the reality is, David needs answers to questions that other people are missing. David's a technical person in the group, and therefore detailed focus, sees all the things that could go wrong, and that can be very disruptive when someone's on a process of explaining. So the co-create alternative that was developed in that instance is doing a pre-meeting debrief, so he is prepared in advance. Making sure that when people are talking, that they stop and pause between subjects. I see that a lot. People just go from subject to subject. Don't allow time or a break for someone to then ask questions, make sure that they fully understand. It's not about judging and challenging people. It's often about the person that is asking the question, not the other way around. And then having a signal maybe that allows people to say, I have a question, they raise their hand, whatever, to politely wait for that, or taking notes for when that break occurs so that you can actually ask those questions. So there's a way to make that shift it from a judgment. Oh God, this person interrupts all the time. We can't get anything done because we go on all these rabbit warrens and chase all these shiny objects, and we never get it solved because of being constantly feeling undermined. Well, you can easily shift that, right? So shifting from difficult people to an intelligent agent, right? So the old mindset is this person is stubborn, lazy, or disrespectful. The new mindset is this person solving problems with their best strategy. Understanding that they are applying their best way of dealing and solving what they need for themselves. So being intelligent about that is going to what problem are they trying to solve for themselves? What constraints exist? What new strategy would be safer? And problem solving it that way, shifting to a collaboration to replace the conflict that occurs. So wrapping up the tools here so far that we've covered today, 3 things. Asking the core questions, whys or whats, to help you do that. We went through the SCARF method, and then the deconstruct in order to co-create, right? And so the tools allow you then to shift the needs pattern into healthier habits, get to the root cause by understanding the engine, and collaboration, which means the buy-in that people, when you go through those steps and you help them and you help yourself to understand the purpose of the dynamics that is satisfying the needs that the brain is looking to satisfy, right? So shifting from the misdiagnosis that we do, right? So misdiagnosed number 1, as an example here, they lack motivation. Maybe we have the wrong motivators, right? Resistance to change. This is threatening their needs. They don't care about quality because maybe it's about the competing priorities, right? They're negative, past disappointment, all of these things. We make all these assumptions and we don't check them, but you need to check them. The reason we have this process, and I challenge you over the next 48 hours, get started. Pick one topic or one team member and go through the whys, go through the SCARF, go through the deconstruction, and then co-create, okay? And pilot that for 2 weeks. See the shift that's going to occur, right? And then, phase 1 is those 3 tools. Phase 2 is the analysis, understanding the conflicts, and then phase 3 is the design through the co-creation, aligning rewards, removing threats, all of these things that we need to usually dive into a little bit more. So wrapping up, where are we so far? We've covered week 1 is clarity, week 2, predictable behaviors, removing the distortion was week 3. The unconscious patterns that we observe as behaviors, then coaching the actions, then finally understanding the why. And next week, we pull that all together into understanding, and it impacts stress, reduces pressure. This is actually an interesting slide. In Acumatch, we have a score, a map section that is specifically around stress response. And stress response is impacted by other things within the map, but it's an important one to understand that if you want to expose someone's unconscious habits, you need to create a simulated high stress situation to see what patterns emerge, because when we're under stress, the brain goes to automatic unconscious responses instantly. They're at the subconscious level, okay? Whereas when there is time to think and there isn't that stress level, people can fake it, if you like, and have a conscious, deliberate behavior and thinking patterns that isn't always the reality of what happens under stress, right? So you can watch these things, you can observe them, and you can document them, right? So you can actually start your next week getting into a 30-day action plan where we take all of these tools that we've covered and put it into a complete plan. So I hope you can join me. Important session, and I will dive into some of these things a bit deeper. All right, so key takeaways today. The three things: behavior, is the surface layer, what you see above the waterline, and the engine is everything that is underneath that. And just remember, we've talked also about how new behavior can shift the engine. Okay, and that also has to do with environment and so on. Every behavior is a strategy that someone is practicing. It's their best strategy that they're applying. And by that, it's also the best behavior that they've come up with that they think will serve that. And so trying a different behavior can have a significant impact to satisfy that need without necessarily giving up that need. Okay, so that's the flip side of that. Needs drive patterns and the strategies. So next week, the integration plan. I look forward to seeing you on that, and that's, I think, it for today. Yeah, so I will leave you with the link if you want to reach out and connect with us, with me, and find out more about these. You can do so. So without further ado, then, thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's session. There was a lot to cover. I make no apology, but I hope it becomes clearer when we put it all together with you next week. See you then.